If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I'm happy to sew along with you the Aurora Triple Zip Crossbody by a Quaint stitch. Thank you so much, Nipa, for allowing me to make this tutorial. I must say this was a really fun sew, but I got worried in the end because I had an extra piece. I'm like, what the heck? Why do I have an extra piece? So if you watched my cutting video already, there are two options for this back panel. So there's the pieced option, which I have here, and then there's the non-pieced option, which is what this would have been instead of all of these pieces. But man, I went into a little bit of a panic, I'm telling you. So yeah, this will go back in my stash. I'll be able to use this piece for something else. But yes, so if you're using the cutting video, I do cut out every single piece, but decide which version you want, and then you can either eliminate the pieced pieces on the back that has the pocket and substitute it with this. So I hope that didn't confuse anybody too much. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I had a slight panic when I realized I had extra pieces. I'm like, this isn't like build your own furniture from IKEA. You can't have extra pieces. Anyways, yeah, so this was a really fun sew. I would say it would be a confident beginner pattern. Even as a beginner, you could probably get through it. It's just so good. I chose to make mine in the Luxxe line leopards, the Luxxe leopards from Galaxy Customs. I just love this. And my accent, I use just a solid Luxxe from Galaxy Customs. Both of these, this is the pewter leopard and this is the pewter. My zippers and zipper pulls are all from blue Calla. My hardware is from Emmaline bags. Interfacing I used in this, I used one layer on my exterior pieces of Fuse Heavy, which is an Emmaline bags product, which is similar to a Decovil Lite, but it's woven, so it sticks like so good. I prefer it over Decovil Heavy any day. You can use foam as your main stabilizer, you can use bouncy foam, you can use Decovil Lite, as long as you can fuse it outside of the seam allowances. So I use sew-in foam, so there was no way of fusing that, and I just don't like using glue, so I chose to use the Fuse Heavy. One layer worked perfectly for this with vinyl. If I was doing it in cotton, I may consider doing 2 layers of that just to give it a little extra something. So I also have in the bottom here for my stabilizer Decovil Heavy, which I also got from Emmaline bags, and I used a waterproof canvas. I haven't even showed you guys the inside of this bag, but the inside is a waterproof canvas, which I got from Fabricville, so I did not have to interface that at all. But if you're using cotton, make sure you back it with the medium woven interfacing. Now I'm doing this all backwards. Let me show you some of the amazing features of this bag. So you can see she's a small to medium sized crossbody bag. She's got an oval bottom, but I show you a trick. Don't be scared of oval bottoms. I show you a trick to get by that, so it's easy to do. It has one pocket here, and these pockets are really cool. Look, they're kind of 3D. They kind of stand out from the bag. There's another one here. They're generous. Now, the only thing I did different in this is I did not choose to do the card slot pocket as per the pattern, mainly because I do like to keep the insides of my bags consistent. My clients always expect to have the 2 slip pockets and a zipper pocket, so I did that. I did not do the card slots. If you need a lesson on how to do card slots, I have many wallet tutorials out there that will show you how to do that, so make sure you check those out. Now you're gonna see I usually like my zipper pocket to be on the back of the bag, but it's on the front because I mix them up, but really not a big deal. It all goes together. So I put in my 2 slip pockets there and my zipper pocket. On the back of it, you have this awesome slip pocket. So that's what I was talking about. If you decide to do the pieced back, you do it this way. If you don't want a piece back, you just want a solid back, you would use this piece. What else? I show you how to do the vinyl tabs. I did need to use large size rivets to get it through all the layers because I did use vinyl and waterproof canvas, so you may need more than a medium rivet there. What else? I really think that's it. Thank you so much, Nipa, for allowing me to make this tutorial. Again, there is a cutting tutorial for this. I cut out all the pieces, including the extra ones. In that tutorial, I will try to include that at the end in the cards there, as well as the Meet the Bags video. What else? What else? What else? If at any time during this video you do like it, please do give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. But yeah, I'm really excited to get sewing this with you. So how about we get to sewing this bag? So you're going to need some rivets. I used large rivets for this one. Some number 5 zipper tape. 3 or 4 zipper pulls. 2 swivel clasps. 2 3/4 inch D-rings, a zipper end, and a slider. Cut pieces, you're going to need your 2 side pieces mirrored to one another with the interfacing outside of the seam allowances for all exterior pieces. Your 2 connector pieces and a scrap piece backed with Decovil Lite. You will see what we do with this as we get on in the pattern. Your back bottom panel exterior. Your exterior center panel. Your exterior back middle panel. Exterior back top panel. Your exterior bottom backed with Decovil Heavy or Peltex outside of the seam allowances. Your 2 lining panels. This is the slip pocket I'm adding in. 4 back pocket panels. Your front pocket panel, exterior and lining. And I am adding in my usual zipper pocket as well as my slip pocket. 4 zipper tabs. And I'm doing a double-sided crossbody strap, so those are my pieces for that. Now, if you need instructions on how to do a double crossbody strap, those classes are down in the Bagmakers Basics playlist linked in the description below. Okay, so let's start with our connectors here. So I'm going to take some double-sided tape. You can use glue here as well. Put it on the wrong side of the 2 connectors that we cut. And we are going to put this wrong sides together with that scrap piece we backed with the Decovil Lite for extra stability. The Decovil Lite will just help make it so our rivets will not pull through. Put these wrong sides together. And then around the cut ones, we're going to go around with 1/8 of an inch top stitch. Once that's done, use those connectors we cut out as a guide to cut this out. What this does is it gives us a completely matching set for this, so you don't have to be trimming. It gives us a nice straight edge for when we go to edge paint this. Now, if you didn't want to edge paint this, you can definitely go in with a Sharpie as well, just to make those ends look more finished off. I like to use Giardini Edgepaint. I think it just adds a really nice element to any raw edges on a bag. So I went ahead and did my lining pockets. This is different than the pattern. If you want to know how I do these, again, you don't have to leave that zipper pocket open like I've shown here, because we will not be turning it through that pocket, but I do have a class on how I do these down in the description below. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to take our lining panels. We're going to do a bunch of marking for the next little bit. So on the back of our lining panels, we're going to measure down 1/2 inch and 1 inch in and draw a line on each of the top pieces. So again, a 1 inch line here, 1/2 inch down. On our back top panels, we're going to do similar along the top. We're going to measure down in 1 inch and 1/2 inch down. We will be doing some marks on this on the front side later on as well. I just didn't want my pen to disappear, and I can't use permanent pens, so we will do the front marking at a later time. On our back middle panel, once again, on each of the top sides, 1 inch down, or 1 inch in and 3/4 of an inch down, and make a 1 inch line. And I'm just going to mark on the top of this that I have to mark my fronts later on as well. Okay, so we're going to take our back bottom panel and mark down from the top 1 inch in and 3/4 of an inch down again. All of these marks will make sense here shortly. Okay, we're now going to take our back pocket panels and from the top, just like on the wrong sides, 1 inch down, or 1 inch in and 3/4 of an inch down on all 4. We're also going to measure in from each of the sides 3/4 inch and make a small mark. Again, this is all on the wrong sides of our fabric. Now that that's done, we can work on now this is called the front pocket panel. I'm actually putting this on the back of the bag, so if I mix up my front and backs, please do forgive me. Take your exterior and lining, put them right sides together, clip in place. Then we're going to sew along here with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's done, trim that seam allowance down to 1/8 of an inch using your pinking shears. And then you can go ahead and you can turn these wrong sides together, finger pressing that seam really good, holding that seam in place with clips. If you are using a fabric that won't melt, you can definitely take this to the iron and press it as well. Now go ahead and top stitch along here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that that's all done, what I'm going to do is just find my bottom center of my exterior piece. I'm going to take my center panel, find my top and bottom centers. And we are going to place this pocket along the bottom, matching up that center, and clip around those 3 sides. Once that's done, go ahead and baste along here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So there is our completed pocket. Now we're going to take our 2 mirrored side panels. I'm going to place them like this and then put them right sides together with each side of the center panel. Once that's done, we can go ahead and sew down here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once we have that seam sewn, we want to press the seam towards the side panel and then top stitch through the side panel with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance for both sides. And this is that exterior complete. Now we're going to go ahead and we are going to prep our 2 9¼ inch, I believe, zippers. So you're going to take your zipper tabs and put them right sides together with the short ends of our zipper. And then we're going to sew through here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance for all 3. Sorry, not all 3, all 4 zipper tabs. Once we have that, one of them sewn, we're going to kind of push, you'll see what I'm doing here, push it up like so. So you see the right side, and you're going to use the seam we just sewn as a guide to fold over our vinyl zipper tab and then top stitch that in place. Now you will notice the back of our zipper tab is longer, and that is okay. This is just guaranteeing that we are sewing through both layers, and we are going to trim that up here momentarily. Go ahead and do the same with the other 3 zipper tabs. so this is what that looks like. So what we're going to do is go ahead and we are just going to flip these over and trim up that raw edge up to about 1/8 of an inch away from the stitching, and then go ahead and trim our zipper tabs to be even with our zipper tape. So that is done. Now we're going to take our back bottom panel and find our top and bottom centers. And on our zipper tape here, we want to find the center of this. So I'm just going to fold it in half and then mark on the wrong side the center point. So you want to make sure your zipper pull is closing to the left. Put this right sides together and clip it along that curve. I found it easier to undo the zipper to get it to clip nicely around that curve. And once we have that in place, we're going to go ahead and we are going to just base this with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance so it will not move when we're adding the lining piece. I'm going to switch into my right zipper foot here. I always switch into my zipper foot so I can get nice and close to the zipper. We want to have a nice even straight zipper, so definitely a zipper foot will help here. So now that we have that done, we're going to take one of our back pocket panels. I forget what they're called, but one of these four. We're going to find our top and bottom centers and put it right sides together, matching up those center marks and clipping across. Now once we have that done, what we're going to do is from that 3/4 inch mark on each side from the short ends, we're going to go ahead and stitch that in place with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once again, the zipper foot on here really helps get a nice and straight zipper. So it's going to be a curvy straight zipper in a way, but we don't want it to be wavy. Start at that 3/4 inch vertical mark and sew across. This is what this looks like here, and you can see now we kind of want to take just on this lining side where we drew that line down from the top. We're going to put a little bit of double-sided taper glue and just fold that end that wasn't stitched down to that line to make a folded edge there just on the lining pieces. On the exterior, we're going to do similar, but we are not going to use any kind of glue. We're just going to fold it down and hold that down with clips. This will make perfect sense as we get into the construction of the bag. It's rather ingenious, but we do want these to kind of stay in place like so for now. Go ahead and flip these wrong sides together. Take it to the iron. I'm going to go ahead, take it to the iron and give this a good press from the lining side to make sure my lining fabric is behaving and not going to be by the zipper. So go ahead and give that a good press. And then once that's done and it's where it needs to be, we're going to measure a 1/4 inch from the left of this side of the zipper tab and a 1/4 inch to the right of this side of the other zipper tab and top stitch in between those marks. Okay, so I am going to pull my threads long. I'm not going to do any back stitching here. I'm going to tie these off in the back so we have a nice continuous top stitch line without the buildup of back stitching, and stitch in between those marks.
So now I'm going to flip this over, pull on my bobbin thread to pull that top thread through, and then I'm going to tie each of these sides off with 3 or 4 knots. I'm also going to take my lighter and just melt my threads a little bit on this side to form a little melted knot, just to ensure that my knot will not come loose. All right, so now we have our back, top, and middle panels, and we're going to do that front marking. Now, I didn't do this before because I didn't want my lines to wash away because I am using an erasable pen. So I'm going to measure up from the bottom, that 1/2 inch and 1 inch down on both. Make sure you do not mix up these pieces because they're slightly different, but they look the same, and it would make a huge difference. So make sure you keep your pattern piece with the labels on it so you know which one is which. Okay, so I'm going to take my back middle piece, and I have all of my markings here. I'm going to find my top and bottom centers. Okay, and then I am going to put this right sides together on our zipper, matching up that centerpiece. Now this isn't going to feel natural because it looks like our curves are going opposite ways, which they are. Just work with it. Having the zipper undone sometimes helps, so try that if you need to as well. Clip this in place, and it will look a little wonky, but that is exactly how it is supposed to look. Go ahead and baste this in place with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once we have that basted, we're going to flip it over so the wrong side is up, take our other lining piece and put it right sides together with the lining piece on the back, match up the center, and clip it across. So our lining panels should be right sides together at this point, and you're just adding it into where we did that top stitch. So we have our right side down, and we're going to go ahead and from those little marks that we made on the back of 3/4 of an inch in, go ahead and sew between those marks with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Right, so this is what this looks like now. Now, we're going to do the same that we did with the other lining piece. We're going to fold down to those, I believe it was 3/4 of an inch mark. Just folding the exterior or the lining piece down like so, using the double-sided tape or glue to hold that in place. Don't have to do anything with the exterior piece. Now what we want to do is we want to take those lining pieces and we want to match them up nice and even. So your exterior pieces are held out of the way. Make sure the lining pieces are even, and this is how we are going to start forming our 3D type looking zipper. So make sure that they are exactly even, especially at that top, because that is what's going to enable us to get that really cool zipper. As you can see here, see how it's kind of 3D? Hold the exterior out of the way, go down both of the sides with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, but leave the bottom open as we will be closing up the bottom turning hole through this open zipper pocket at the end. Right, so that is done. We have our opening in the bottom. I went ahead and I put my nameplate in. I put mine 2 inches up centered from the bottom. You can go ahead and you can trim up the seam allowance of the zipper pocket to about 1/8 of an inch or so, just on the 2 sides. Make sure you're not cutting your exterior pieces. Okay, so you can see how that worked out. It worked out really good. Now what we want to do is take some double-sided tape and right below those marks we made at the bottom edges, we want to put the double-sided tape just below there. And then you're going to bring the folded edge of our exterior up to that line and clip it in place. And this is definitely finishing off that 3D pocket. So again, take the folded under part of our exterior piece and bring it up to that line, like so. And then you're going to kind of fold this away, out of the way, once it's all stuck down, to expose that seam. And just in the exterior seam there, we're going to stitch it right along that fold with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that is going to close up that gap. So it ends just before the zipper tab. Do not throw the zipper tab on both sides. So it may feel a little bit awkward here. You may need a little bit of a hump jumper. You're only sewing for about 3/4 of an inch to an inch maybe in these corners, but that is going to definitely close up those side holes. Make sure you're not catching too much of the lining in there. It should be lying flat. And you're just finishing off that seam. So you can see here, it's closed off that seam and it's closed off that pocket perfectly. And now we just need to go in and do a top stitch. So we're going to go needle down into that hole that where our stitching ended. Actually, here I'm going to go from the exterior. I'm going to back stitch at the exterior part for my top stitch. And then I'm going to make sure my needle is down where my previous top stitching stopped, in the same hole. Pull my threads long, and then you can go ahead and you can close, or you can tie that off in the back by pulling that bobbin thread to pull the top thread through and tie in 3 knots. And you're going to do the same with the opposite side, and you're going to have a nice and seamless top stitch along that zipper pocket. Right, so that's one zipper pocket done, and it's perfect. See the 3D effect? It's just such an amazing thing to do. Again, the bottom is open here. Now you're going to do the exact same process with your top panel, the zipper, and the 2 lining panels, but you do not need to leave the bottom of the lining zipper pocket open for this one. We only need it open on the bottom one. So go ahead and repeat what we just did with the neck zipper. So this is our second exterior done. It looks good. Make sure you have that opening. Now we're going to take these two and we're going to put them right sides together and clip down the sides. At this point, if you aren't using vinyl and you're using cotton tabs, definitely refer to the pattern because this will be done differently than how I'm doing here. There's different instructions for vinyl connectors and cloth connectors. So I am measuring down 3/4 of an inch from each side of the tops, and then another 1/4 of an inch away from that. And what that is going to do is that's going to leave, we're going to sew here to that line, jump over and sew over. That's going to leave a little opening for when we go to put the rivets through that seam, so we do not have to cut the seam with our hole punch, which could really cause a problem with the integrity of the bag. So this is only for vinyl connectors that you would leave that little 1/4 of an inch gap. And if you are doing cotton connectors, make sure you follow the instructions in the pattern as to how to do that. So I sewed to that line, I broke my thread, I jumped over to the next line and then sewed all the way down with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you'll do the exact same thing on the other side. So this is what that looks like. We have a tube. You can kind of see here, there's this little small opening in the side, which is where our rivets will go later on. Kind of trim the top corners on an angle. That'll give us a little less bulk when we sew this. Open up that seam, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to baste that seam in place with about 1/4 inch seam allowance just to hold that seam open, and it's just going to help reduce that bulk when we go to top stitch this later on. All right, this is what our exterior looks like so far. We don't have the bottom on yet. We're not going to worry about that just yet. Go ahead and put this aside for now. All right, so now we're going to prep our main zipper. So put it wrong side up, and on the right hand side, draw a 1-inch line. That's going to help us get our zipper pull on nice and straight later on, as I do not have my pull on just yet. On the opposite end, right side up, kind of fold each end down at a 90-degree angle, I think this is, and hold with a pin. Do the same with the opposite side, making the match as close as possible and hold with a pin, and then go ahead, take this to the machine and baste those in place. Once they're basted in place, go ahead and trim the tails off like so, so it's nice and even with the zipper tape. And then you can go ahead and you can pull the tape apart. Now we're going to take our lining panel. Now, I wish I'd done this with my zipper pocket, because now this slip pocket is going to be in the back with the way I've placed this, but that's okay. Draw 1 inch in, take your zipper tape right side up and your lining piece right side up, match it up with that 1-inch line, and clip it in place. I've done my zipper just a little bit longer. I will trim it up later. It's better to be too long than too short. When you get to the 1-inch line on the opposite side, you're going to veer the zipper tape down, because at that point we don't want the zipper tape to get caught in our stitching, as we will be putting a zipper end on this later on. So we've got that side done. With the opposite side, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to have the curvy part of the zipper coming from the right side. So just like so, right side up, the curvy parts to the right. Clip this in place, and once again at the 1-inch line, make sure you veer it down so the tail will not get stuck in our stitching at all. Once that's done, we can go ahead and baste those in place with an 1/8 inch seam allowance, which I've done. I've put my zipper pull on, matched up that line so I know it's nice and straight, just to make sure my zipper's lining up properly on that curvy side, which it is. I'm going to keep the zipper pull on for now. We have these right sides together. Again, you don't need to have that zipper pocket open as I have here. I will be closing that up later on. Go ahead and clip down the sides. Now, just like we did with the exterior, if you're using the vinyl tabs, we're going to do those little marks, once again, 3/4 inch down and 1/4 inch away from that, to create that little opening for our rivet to go through later on and do our stitching just down the sides and opening up those seam allowance exactly like we did with the exterior. So once you have that done, go ahead and pull your zipper pull off. We don't need it on. We'll put it on later on, and kind of tuck your zipper tails in and underneath and go ahead and baste those side seams open. Make sure you're not catching that zipper tail when you do that. Now that we have our lining and our exterior panels done, except for the bottoms, you're going to go ahead and turn your exterior panel right side out. Now before we put these right sides together, make sure our zippers are closing in the same direction, which mine are, and put your exterior into your lining, making sure all the zippers are going to the left. Tuck in those zipper tails and start first by matching up our top centers on both sides of our lining and our exterior pieces. So these are right sides together, zipper pulls all closing to the left. Do the same with the opposite side, and a couple clips to hold that center. And then move over to the side seams and match up those side seams. It's very important that these side seams match up exact as we've done those little rivet holes. And we want them to match up when the bag is done so we can stick our rivet through that hole to close that hole up. If they don't match up, then it's kind of awkward to kind of feed that rivet through. And because of the thicknesses I am using with my vinyls and my waterproof canvases, I did end up using large rivets to get through those holes, but we will get to that later on. So go ahead, match up those centers, and then evenly distribute the fabric in between those quarter sections to clip them all together. Everything's clipped in place. Once again, double check that your zipper tails are down into the center and kind of veered away. We don't want them caught in our stitching here. Now, if I was doing this on a flatbed machine, I would go ahead and I would sew it from the inside of the bag right here. I'm going to take it to my cylinder arm machine and sew along here. You could do the exact same thing if you have a free arm. So go ahead and sew around here with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I could have put on my zipper foot, but with a 1/4 of an inch, I don't have to get super close to those zipper teeth, so I just kept my regular foot on. So you can decide if you want to put your zipper foot on at this point or not. Once that is done, go ahead and flip your bag right side out. Really easy through the big opening in the bottom. Kind of give the lining and the exterior a tug to make sure the seam was caught. Double check that your zipper looks nice and straight, which mine does. If you need to go back in and correct that, you definitely can. Go ahead and reach in the tube and pull your lining through, bringing these wrong sides together. Give it a nice tight tug. It's nice with the open bottom because you can definitely pull that lining nice and tight away from the zipper. On the side pieces here, I'm going to go ahead and put some clips in there. Now, if you are doing cotton connectors, you will not be sewing those side sections because that is where you will be putting your cotton connector in and then top stitching it. But because I'm using vinyl connectors, I can go ahead and top stitch this all around. So make sure if you're using cotton connectors that you do follow the instructions in the pattern. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to top stitch all the way around this with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, if you are on a flatbed machine, you may want to turn this inside out so the exterior is on the inside so you can top stitch it from the inside of the bag. It makes it a lot easier on a flatbed to do it that way. All right, top stitching is done. It looks great. And now it's time to apply or put on the bottom. So find your top and bottom centers of your bottom piece, as well as the side curvy parts. Find the centers there. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull these kind of out again, so you're bringing your lining away from your exterior, so your exterior is back to being wrong or right sides together, like so. And then we're going to put on our oval bottom. So we're going to start with one side, put these right sides together, match up a center, and just clip along that one straight side. We're going to do the two straight sides first, and then we're going to do the curvy sides. I find this super helpful to do so your bottom doesn't shift. Round bottoms and oval bottoms are challenging, but I find this trick works really well for me, so I hope it works well for you. So we're going to go ahead along that straight line and sew along there with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so that's one side done. Go ahead and do the same with the other straight edge, leaving the curvy edges unsewn, and sew across there with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance as well. Okay, this is what we got. Now you're going to see how perfectly these curvy marks fit into where they need to go. So match up the curvy center with that center seam and then clip around. And then we're just going to start and stop sewing where our side seams or our straight edges of our bottom pieces we started and stopped sewing, and just sew around those curvy parts from here to here, and the same with the opposite side. Super easy. Once we have that done, reach in through the bag and just run your finger along that seam to make sure everything was caught and there's no holes. If it's good, go ahead and trim that seam allowance down to about 1/4 of an inch or so, all the way around. These are my new Kai scissors. They're so sharp. I loves them. Okay, so that is done. You can go ahead and you can turn your bag right side out again. While we have the opening in the lining, make sure you're pushing all of those seams out nice and taut for the exterior. Double check that everything was caught in the seam. It looks really good to me. And then go ahead and push your lining inside the bag nice and tight. Now we're going to close up our lining. So that bottom pocket that we left the opening in, pull that out, reach in through that opening and grab the open bottom of the lining and pull it through that pocket. Once you have that done, we're going to first start with the straight edge of that pocket, finding those bottom centers that we previously marked and match them up. This is kind of like boxing a corner, but the corners are curvy. So we're going to do the bottom part first. Don't worry about the corner edges. Just match up that bottom. Once you have that all clipped, go ahead and sew across just that bottom with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that that's done, we can work on these corners. So it's just like boxing a corner, match up those seams, but it's on a little bit of a curve, and that's just for the shape of the bag. So clip those in place and along that curve of bringing those seams together. So with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. There you go, that is the bottom all done. Stuff that back in through that pocket, and now all we have left to do with the sewing part is to fold down the raw edges of that opening in the zipper pocket. Hold with some clips and go ahead and top stitch that shut with a 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to close it up. That's all done. Stuff that pocket back in where it goes, and the sewing part is done. Yay! Now we're going to work on those rivets. So for the thicknesses of mine, I ended up having to switch up to large rivets, so you may have to do the same. Take your pattern piece, and where the little dots are on the pattern piece, mark them onto your vinyl piece. That is where we are going to put our holes for our rivets. Next, what we want to do is take our D-ring and kind of slip it on like so. Now we're going to work with the exterior and find that little opening right there. Sometimes if you take an awl and just poke it through, make sure it goes all the way through to the other side, that the holes are matching up. Just kind of finding where it is and opening it up a bit, and they do. Now I'm going to take my rivet and put it through one end like so, and then stick it in that little opening that we left and push it through to the lining. Now there's a little bit of finagling in here, but it's not super hard. Just kind of massage it through until you see it poking through the lining side, just like so. Bring your vinyl connector around and put it into that stem like so, and then put on your cap, and then go ahead and press that in place for both sides. So that's what that looks like. I put my zipper end on it already. I'm going to kind of stuff it in through the side here. Take a look. She looks good. I'm going to grab my crossbody strap and attach it on. Looks amazing. So we have, make sure all of our zippers are closed in the bottom. Our top looks great. Our slip pocket looks amazing. Pat yourself on the back, and we're done.
All right, that's it. That's all. What did you think of that? I've learned some new techniques. I stuck to the pattern pretty true to learn those techniques rather than going rogue, and yeah, it worked out great. I just still love these 3D type zippers that stand out from the bag. I think that is such an awesome treat. Anyways, again, if you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you'd like to support my channel further, you can always buy me a coffee. That's linked down below in the description. And also check out my membership site. There may be something over there that interests you. And until the next one, I'll catch you guys later. Bye.